All right, guys, I want to give you three tips. Three tips for LinkedIn right now. A lot of folks out there ask me questions about B2B content strategy for LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn and you're servicing the B2B crowd from a marketing and messaging perspective, there are three things that you need to keep in mind to effectively deliver for these folks. Number one, you want to speak to the problem and not your product. Problem, not product. Hammer on the problem. Let these folks know that you understand their situation, that you have the empathy because you've been in their shoes, that you have the authority to address the problem because you actually have the expertise, the experience, whatever you're bringing to the table, but you must illustrate this. And ideally, you illustrate the empathy and the authority through story, right? This is an age-old, most ancient form of communication of man. So you want to do the problem and not your product. Nobody wants to hear about your product. Nobody wants to hear about your service. Nobody cares about you. Once you recognize this and you understand that you're talking about the problem, and they will connect with that. They will understand. Your potential customers want to know that you know their challenges and struggles. They want to know that you're capable of solving it. And they want to hear stories because it's just darn more engaging. So, problem, not the product. Number two, you're not selling information, content, information overload. There's a world of Google that exists right now. You guys probably heard of it. It is the content repository for all information. You're not going to out Google by delivering better information. You're not going to be the best, grab it by the throat content provider of information they've never seen before. That's not going to happen. Instead of trying to go after the informational approach, you want to give them context over information. Give them some context by which they can carry the information that they already know. I'll give you an example. In the B2B world, everyone's telling them what to do. If I tell you right now that the Federal Reserve is printing money, that's the information. But what's the context? What does printing money mean? What does inflation mean? I know the information. Context it for me. Contextualizing for your customer is your goal. If I say inflation means that the bank account number you look at right now in your savings account is going to be worth less each year, even though the number itself won't change, now you've got some context. If I tell you that printing of money means reduction in value of the dollar, great, I get that. Inflation means there's going to be less in the packaging, even though it's the same price. There's fewer. We all know about the bag of potato chips that's half full. This is story. This is context. This gives you something to put a handle on the information. So rule number one of B2B, your content making, you're not talking about the product. You're talking about their problem. Don't get to your product. Rule number two, you're contexting and it's not information-ing. You want to give them context, not information. The information's there. It's free. All the information you want, google.com. Context, well, they can't get that from anyone but you. And the third one is engagement itself as content. Engagement is its own form of content. Believe it or not, everyone's out there pumping out content. It's all about how can I engage in the community and become part of the conversation? And you do that through other people's posts. Other people. You get on there and you add to the conversation. When someone posts something in your world, you jump in on the conversation and say, that's a great point, but here's three more items to think about. ... You now have some conversational clout, we'll call it. The ability to add to the conversation in the macro is its own content. No one's just going to come to your stuff and follow just your stuff. We all know we look at multiple people throughout the day on social. You're one of many names that they're scrolling through. So if you want to show up in multiple times and they're not coming to you, you do that showing up in other content in the same vein. This gets into hashtag strategies and a lot of other stuff, which I'm going to save for later. The point is three items, three takeaways for you. If you're doing B2B content, whether you're the company or you're representing folks that, like myself, that you do this for them, number one, you want to speak to the problem, not to your product. Number two, you want to provide them context and not information. And number three, you want to make sure that you're giving them a handle by which they can use you in the engagement section. Engagement itself is its own content. That's it. That's all I got for you. I want to thank you guys for listening. There's no pitch here. There's no sale, and there's no webinar coming up and blah, blah, blah. It's just trying to help out. Go knock them dead out there, folks. Remember, communication is power.